Since really this is a conversation among everyone who's here, we'd love to have you move forward. Welcome. I know we're post-lunch. And there have been lots and lots of discussions over the course of the last few days, but we're excited to have all of you here for this conversation. We're going to do very brief intros first, and then I'm going to frame the session, and we'll dig into some presenting from the panel, and then really leave a lot of time for a robust dialogue with all of you who are here. So just in terms of introductions, I'm Sara Johnson. I'm the Chief Education Officer at Carnegie Hall and Director of the Wild Music Institute, which is the Hall's Education and Social Impact Programs arm.
Thank you. My name is Danielle Belen, and I am an Associate Professor of Violin at the University of Michigan School of Music, Theater, and Dance. I'm also the founder and artistic director of Center Stage Strings, which is a summer program held in Ann Arbor.
Thanks, Danielle.
And I'm Ahmad Mays. I'm the Director of Education and Community Engagement with the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra.
I'm Dan Trahey. I work at the Peabody Conservatory. I started the Orchids program with the Baltimore Symphony, and now I'm a consultant for people starting social change through music programs in the United States and Europe.
Thank you all for being here. And welcome, those of you who are coming in, come on forward. We're encouraging people to come to the front and really join the conversation throughout the session. I'm sure that people are familiar with Slido at this point. This is an opportunity to ask a question on your phone or digital device, so please do that. We will be checking questions through that platform, as well as allow a lot of opportunity for people who are in the room who might want to ask a question in person. And we'll get to that about halfway through the session. So you see the title, or we had the title a second ago. This session is billed as being about talent and attracting talent to programs. But when we started talking about it, we were, not surprisingly, talking about pathways. And the fact that everyone in this room knows that if we want to have talent that is developed at a certain level, we have to start at a much earlier point and look at access and opportunity. And so we're really going to talk about that whole pathway and try to provide some strategies and tips that have emerged from the work that we've done and that the panelists have done that are pragmatic and that are actionable. I'll say one other thing about the pathway piece, which is just, if you'll forgive me, my personal soapbox on this. I know that the field is using pipeline and that lots of fields use pipeline. The reason I like the word pathway is that, well, there are two things, really. Pipeline has other connotations that I'm just a little troubled by. But I think more importantly, pathway acknowledges the agency of young people and the choices that young people make. So we all know that there are lots of things that might throw a person out of pursuing a life in classical music, but we all make choices, and that choice piece, I think, is really important, and so that's why the pathway word is exciting to me. So we are gonna start thinking about opportunity and access with Dan, who's gonna kick us off.
Great. We had a recommendation that we should do something different right after lunch to get you guys energized again. So I'm going to ask, I'm from Detroit and happy to be back here. And I'm going to ask you guys a few questions. I have some goodies for you if you answer them correctly. I have say nice things about Detroit bumper sticker. I did not buy the, sorry about this, but bitch, I'm from Detroit yoga pants that were in the hotel lobby. They're there if anyone wants them. I also have the Diana Ross, Stevie Wonder, and young MJ stickers right here. Rick Robinson cannot answer any of these questions since he is a Detroit staple. So the first question I have for you, anyone want to answer this one, is what are the two subgenres of music that originated in the city of Detroit? There are two of them. Oh, come on, take a guess. Go for it.
Motown and like electronica.
Yeah, techno. Got it. What sticker would you like?
I want say nice things.
Say nice things? All right, here you go. It's you. You're welcome. Second one. Second one is which one of these two people, Diana Ross or Stevie Wonder, are not from the city of Detroit? And okay, for a double sticker, where is Stevie Wonder from?
I don't know, I just want the Diana.
All right, okay, get up here, get up here. She's green in this one. I don't know, it's an album cover. Anyone know where Stevie Wonder, what hometown? Yeah? Saginaw, or is, well, we won't tell them the nickname to Saginaw, but which one would you like? Okay, cool. Yeah, there you go. Okay, I'll start. That's enough of that. I struggle to talk about talent. I'm not sure I believe in talent. I think that, or that everyone is as talented as the next person. So when the subject of this, oh, talent, where art thou? I mean, my answer to that is that it's everywhere, right? It's in Inglewood on the south side of Chicago. It's in Detroit. It's in Mansalona, Michigan, in the middle of nowhere. It's everywhere. And so that's actually the answer to the question for me. But how you develop that talent is another question. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of what we've done in Baltimore in terms of developing talent and developing interest. And I just want to give a shout out to the Baltimore peeps that are in the room over there, Molly Westbrook and Marin, Johnny Walker. So thank you guys, and Peter Kajomi in the back over there. I think the first thing is to determine who you want to serve. What demographic do you want to serve? And then from there, how are you going to communicate with that demographic? And that's really about code switching, right? That we're speaking with different communities in different ways to get the same results. And then any pedagogues in the room know that we say one thing to one person and the exact opposite thing to another to get the exact same result. And so defining what community you want to serve and then speaking the languages of that community, I think, are very important. The second one is to determine what is your goal? What is the goal? Is it to get folks into symphony orchestras? Is it to provide something to do for the most dangerous hours of a child's life, which are the after-school hours? And then the other thing is just to ask the community that you want to work with, the demographic that you've decided you want to work with, ask what they want, right? So if you're in West Baltimore and you ask someone on the street, well, what do you want for your student? What do you want for your kid? Most of them are not going to say, I want them to play in the Detroit Symphony. They're going to say, I want my child to go to college. I want my kid to be healthy. I want them to have a beautiful life. And so maybe backing up a little bit and thinking about the human values and not about this pipeline directly to a conservatory and orchestra, and think about how we can help cultivate beautiful human beings first, and using that as a strong place to start this journey towards being a musician. Then what are the vehicles? What are the vehicles for getting students included in things? Does it have to solely be classical music? Can we start by hooking people on hip-hop, on blues, on jazz, all different genres of music, and then teach them about Mozart and Beethoven, and just thinking about what music is the community that you've decided to serve. What are people listening to, and starting for that, so that you're validating other cultures' music, and not just thinking about this Western, white European, male, dominated and driven repertoire that is generally the symphony orchestra. A few other things. One, be consistent, as consistent as possible. Think about the students, the communities that you're serving, and think about what they're doing when there's a snow day. We might be partying, sleeping until noon and all that, but what's happening in our communities during that time? Can you get to those communities on the snow day? How many days during the summer can you have programming? Can you do a program when everyone else is going to Cancun over spring break? Most of the students that we serve are not doing that, and can you serve them during that time? Here's a big one. Your organizations do not own the students, right? That's a big one. We do not. There's not. Sometimes I feel like some of these organizations would put a tattoo saying the program name on a student's arm or something like that. And we have to be child and community centered. and worry about that first and the organization second. And I know that those of you who are building organizations, that's a very difficult thing, but who are we serving? It's who we're serving is the most important. If we're only serving the organization, then we're basically only serving ourselves. Another one is partnering. You have to partner. Not one of our organizations in this room can do everything that a child needs to develop that talent and that interest all the way up. Okay? In Baltimore, we have a beautiful community. Not that we don't fight a little bit, it's a family, so there's squabbles and all that, but there is a network of programming in Baltimore that can take a student from West Baltimore or East Baltimore or North Baltimore all the way into the Peabody Conservatory, all the way into the Cincinnati College of Music. And we utilize all of those resources. So their entry point may be the Orchids program with the Baltimore Symphony, but the Orchids program doesn't provide private lessons, and that is okay, because Orchids is an accessibility program. And so then we take the kids to places like Interlochen. I think there's probably some Interlochen folks in the room. Thank you very much for having our kids there. And then on to things like Take a Stand with the LA Philharmonic, and then on to the Peabody Preparatory, and on to the School for the Arts and all that. But your organization most likely will not be able to serve your community with everything that they need. Next one, break down the hierarchy of administrators, teachers, and students. Let the students make decisions. If you want to keep folks involved, they have to have buy-in. What kind of repertoire is going on in the concert? This might seem crazy, but at the Orchids program, that's what's happening now. The older students are picking repertoire. They're composing their own music. They're deciding where we play concerts sometimes, which it means that they own the program and that they're actually in control of their future. Stick with these students, okay? We get calls every day from the kids that we've placed in colleges and conservatories complaining about those colleges and conservatories and about how their needs are not necessarily being met there. So invite your students back, get them to do performances, have them be the mentors, have them be the teachers, give them audition help. There might be money that's needed for a computer or a plane ticket home, things like that. And the areas that we're working in, there's just not a lot of money, so we're providing a lot of those things for the students. A few more, start as early as possible. We all know that as musicians in this room. Provide non-musical resources. That's a huge one, okay? And if you're working with a demographic that isn't necessarily poor, there's still needs there. I was talking to Lisa yesterday about this, and if a kid's got cash, their parents have cash, that doesn't mean that they don't need certain services, such as what if they're the only African American at their school? There's a massive amount of resources that we need to provide to help facilitate that type of environment for that student. Two more, concertize all the time from the very beginning. Concertize all the time, because that being on stage provides the support necessary for these kids to keep getting better and keep getting more refined and more interested in their music. And the last one is a very simple one, and we should know this as musicians, but it's just listen your ass off. All the time listening. And it's weird for me to be up here talking about this with everybody, but just sit and listen and allow the community that you've decided to work with to really direct the programming that you're trying to do, and the program will blossom from there. That's it.
Thank you, Dan. That's fantastic. And now we're going to shift to Danielle.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, it's such a pleasure to be here on this panel. I'm normally playing concertmaster for the Sphinx Symphony at this time and rehearsing all day today to get ready for the finals concert tomorrow. And so I'm thrilled to be able to take advantage of all these amazing panels. And one thing I particularly love about these panels is the diverse background of each of us and the perspective we take on a particular topic. So Dan just spoke very beautifully and eloquently and broadly about developing talent. And I would like to sort of narrow the focus for a moment, being that my specialty is in pedagogy and in teaching violins specifically, but I think what I'm going to talk about applies to virtually all musicians. And I'd like to start by actually telling my story as quickly as I can, because this is not about me, but I'd like to tell sort of my background, and I'd like to tell it in reverse order. So right now I teach at the University of Michigan. I've been here for 4 years, and I'm proud to say that 25% of my class of 16 students are students of underrepresented minorities. And let's back up. Before this, I taught at the Colburn School in Los Angeles, and primarily focusing on pre-college students who were really on, competition track. I have students who have placed in, prize winners in competitions, and that is part of who I am, my tapestry as a teacher as well, in addition to teaching at the college. Back up another step, I started Center Stage Strings, a summer festival for highly gifted students from around the country. I'd like to also say that a very large percentage, something like 15 to 20%, also underrepresented minorities at Center Stage Strings, and we are highly selective. And the due date, the application deadline was just a couple days ago, but I'm going to keep it open for at least another week, and anybody that would like to talk to me, I'm more than happy to. Backing up just a little bit more, I was an undergraduate student at University of Southern California studying with the esteemed pedagogue Robert Lipset. Incredibly lucky to get into that studio. It was absolutely life-changing. At the same time, there was also a foundation that loaned me a fine old Italian violin that I've actually had until just recently, when I was able to, my husband and I have been able to save up all these years and buy our own instrument. Before USC, of course, I was in high school, taking private lessons. My mom drove me 2 hours each way for my lessons each week. And violin was beginning to really become my everything. Music was becoming my everything. Back up to middle school, first taste of playing concertmaster, I liked that. And private lessons weekly. Backing up a little bit more, ages 8 to 11, that's when I started taking private lessons, was around the age of 8. Wasn't very serious, didn't practice very much, but nevertheless, private lessons every week. Before the age of 8, I was in Suzuki group classes. I started at the age of 5. And there you go, all the way from where I am now back to the beginning. And I felt inclined to tell this story backwards because I think it's very easy to look at, especially here at SphinxConnect and the Sphinx competition. There are so many fine artists in their 20s, their early to mid-20s. I am not in my early to mid-20s anymore. But it's sometimes easy to take for granted that it seems like there are many of us here. You'll look on the stage of the Sphinx Symphony and hear the finalists and the semifinalists, and it's truly amazing, the level of talent that's here. And this isn't even half of what's in the country. But I'd like to now shift to my point, which is it's still not enough. And we're talking about, I think Ahmad is going to speak in a moment about at least one thing he'll talk about, fellowship programs that orchestras are beginning to offer, which I think is an extraordinary step forward. Fellowships, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, a major orchestra like, let's take the Cincinnati Symphony or the LA Phil, I know has this program, Detroit Symphony, many, many other orchestras are following suit. And they are putting a call out there to students, musicians of color who are competitive at that level to come in and be selected to, in some cases, join the orchestra for a year. Some cases, it's a couple of years. They're paid a salary, but they're not yet an official orchestra member. They have to still audition. But certainly, it's leveling the scales. But the pool, and the title of this panel today, "Oh Talent, Where Art Thou?" It's very clever. It's true, and I hear that from a lot of colleagues. It's like, okay, where are these students? As you could tell from my story, and I think this story, it's a little different for everybody here, for sure. But I think those of us who have concertized and become professional artists and teachers, private lessons are everything. And again, of course, I'm talking about a narrow part of everything that we do in the arts here, but we are talking about who's going to get those positions in those orchestras. Private lessons. I think Sphinx Performance Academy is doing an incredible job. I think the Sphinx Overture program is doing an incredible job, and numerous other ventures around the country. I think private teachers are not doing as great a job. And last year at SphinxConnect, on not this stage because we were at a different hotel, but a woman named Jennifer Arnold, and I don't know if she's listening, but she's a professional violist and teacher. And she got up here and looked out at the audience, and she challenged those of us in the audience, and this really went right to my heart. She said, those of you who are teaching at the highest levels, who are privileged to work with the most talented young individuals, those who you really see having professional careers and carrying the torch on into the future, those of you, you need to do whatever you can to find those students. How many people in this room teach group classes or public school or youth orchestra, and how many times do you say per year, there's this one special kid, and if he could only, or she could only have private lessons every week, gosh, imagine what they could do. There's one, sometimes there's two, sometimes there's three, but somehow, and I don't have an answer for this today, but somehow there needs to be a direct link from that point to, like, I should get a phone call, or many of my colleagues across the country who are privileged to work with some of the highest talent levels in this country. We should be getting a phone call, and we should do whatever we can to make that happen. If this student can't afford it, and you don't belong to an institution that can give them a scholarship, give them your own scholarship. I have a little scholarship program for myself that comes into play pretty often to make things happen for certain students. And so I echo Jennifer Arnold's challenge, and I take it even further and say, if you are that teacher, that ambitious pedagogue, teaching is your life, do something proactive. Keep your ear to the ground, or maybe even call. I've been so inspired this week, and especially inspired by Aaron Dworkin's speech, the opening plenary. And I think after I leave this weekend, I'm going to do something a little bit differently myself. And I just like to wrap up by saying that my summer program, Center Stage Strings, we are able to offer many scholarships, but that's just a summer program. And that's also great, but not enough. It's weekly attention from the highest caliber teachers. So, yeah, thank you for letting me go on about that.
Danielle, thank you. And I think, as Dan also said, and as Danielle said, and as we have said in many, many sessions, this isn't not, there's no one organization that's going to solve this. There's no one person. This is going to be a collective effort over probably a long period of time. And I think what you're talking about is a sense of urgency and taking ownership and allowing, if individuals can find the way to feel accountable to the promises that we're making to each other about moving the needle on these issues, that will really help. Thank you.
Thank you.
And there was applause, I think, wanting to happen for Danielle. And now we're going to go to Ahmad.
Yes, thank you. So fellowships, for my benefit, just a really quick show of hands. Are there any musicians in the room who have participated in, have thought about doing a fellowship? Just put your hands up, whether you're actively doing it or have considered it as an option. And then administrators, who in the room is currently doing a fellowship program? Great, so we've got a little bit of both sides of the question here. So just a little bit of background about what we're doing in Cincinnati. So the CSO CCM Diversity Fellowship launched in fall of 2016 with a pretty specific goal to increase the amount of qualified talent for orchestras from underrepresented backgrounds. We want our fellows to be moving on to next step career opportunities when they leave our program, and we want to make sure we're being intentional to develop networks of support for them while they're with us in Cincinnati. Networks that extend far beyond our city and have national and international presence. The fellowship is a dual track program that combines a Master of Music program or an Artist Diploma program at CCM with full scholarship with a practical orchestral performing experience with the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra. There's mentorship from CSO musicians, career development and performance seminars from guest teachers who are leaders in their fields, mock auditions. We provide audition travel stipends to our fellows, and we have recently entered into a partnership with the Chautauqua Symphony Orchestra that is an 8-week residency that many of our fellows will have the opportunity to do, playing with the Chautauqua Symphony Orchestra over the summer and receiving similar guidance during the summer months there in New York. We have 10 fellowships at one time. We take 5 fellows every year, 2 violins, a viola, cello, and a bass. And you know, the question of this session, talent, oh talent, where art thou? Yes, catchy name, right? We've been through this the last 2 years. We want to attract a rich talent pool to audition for our fellowship that is not only going to fulfill, you know, the demands of the program well, but is also the right program for them, because everyone has different goals. And our approach has been an all of the above approach when it comes to communicating about the program. Could I just ask who's heard of this program in the room? CSO CCM Diversity Fellowship? Okay, it's about half the room. So in our comprehensive approach, some of the traditional methods. So we did ad placement and festival programs, international musician, both digital and print in IM, exhibiting at college days because we are a dual track fellowship, summer festivals, lots of sponsored and targeted social media posts that we do to spread the word about this program. A large direct mail and email campaign. So we mailed flyers to 5,000 string faculty at colleges and conservatories in the US and Canada, you know, with a cover letter that was signed by our music director and the dean at CCM. We followed that up with an email a few weeks later to those very same people. And then we were intentional to be a little more personal, maybe grassroots in our approach, and asked members of our orchestra to reach out to faculty at all of the top conservatories in the country and send a personal email themselves, to which we received good response. I'll also put out there, actively seek publicity for your program. Dedicate resources to landing that national news story. That goes a really long way. But also say, don't forget about local media. You know, you might say, oh, a story on Channel 11, 6 o'clock news, people in Cincinnati might see it, but what's that gonna do for me? Well, that type of stuff is really great social media content. And as soon as that story hits, we've got it up on the Facebook page to help people learn about what we're doing here in Cincinnati. With this publicity thing as well, I'd also say that I think frequently, at least the case in Cincinnati, is this type of work falls under the umbrella of the education department. And anyone who works in education in orchestras probably feel a lot like I do. We're often siloed in our work, and we're also often the one-stop shop for everything. So we develop our own strategy, we produce our programs, we market them, we present them, we do all of the production, do the follow-up surveys. You got to get out of that and identify the resources within your orchestra that can support this work, because you're going to need a communications director working with you. Our VP of communications he has his own goals around communicating about our fellowship. We work closely with the communications department at CCM, and they have similar feelings about how this should work. So make sure you're dedicating all of the right resources at your organization to promoting this program. Moving on, I'll say networking is extremely important. So having a presence, your organization having a presence at SphinxConnect, certainly, but also Gateways Music Festival, League of American Orchestras Conference, and the League's Diversity Forum, Color of Music Festival, the new one down in Charleston. Be there, be present. You're not always going to yield a fellow from those trips, but people are learning about it. They're spreading the word. Your face is becoming familiar. It's important to be out there and be visible. And also get your fellows, ask them to come to the event. So we require CSO-CCM fellows to come to SphinxConnect, and I tell them when you're there, tell everyone you meet about your experience so that they might have an opportunity to consider it for themselves. I'll go on. An important thing we're finding now is more and more fellowships are popping up. I think there are maybe like 5 new ones that came into existence, it seems like this year. 2 in Los Angeles, right? Is collaborating with other fellowship programs. So, you know, we're all interested in engaging the same musicians for our programs. And how effective are we going to be if we have 10 different audition lists and 10 different audition dates and 10 different audition processes? So we've kind of started that collaborative process this weekend. CSO-CCM Diversity Fellowship teamed up with the Los Angeles Orchestra Fellowship, and we had a combined audition here in Detroit earlier this week. So doing more things like that, keeping the dialogue between programs going is not only helpful to the development of each of our programs, but practically for making the opportunities available to as many people as possible. So I know we're getting low on time, so I have a lot more I can talk about, but I want to just approach it from the side of someone who might be considering doing a fellowship program. And so I've talked to a lot of people over the last 4 days here who have, you know, expressed some degree of interest, but a lot of hesitation about fellowships. And I understand that. You know, hear things like, well, you guys have a degree program associated with yours, and I'm just done with school. You know, there's lots of options out there. Our program offers an artist diploma program where coursework is virtually non-existent and it's all performance-based. There are many fellowships that are independent of degree programs that are out there. So don't immediately stop looking because of that impression you might have. I've also heard a lot of reservation or just people being off-put by the idea of being under a microscope, being a special member of the orchestra, and the pressure of that being something that you're not interested in. And what I would say to that is we're very aware of that, and we're very intentional to relieve those types of perceptions. So there is, since maybe 2 years before our fellowship launch, a constant dialogue with the members of our orchestra. When I started in my position in the fellowship launch, we had a meeting. We had our orchestra there, and we laid out specific roles that they play in this fellowship and what they can do to maximize your chances of success. And we're, you know, pleased to hear from our fellows that assimilating to the orchestra was not a challenge to them, and it's been an incredible learning experience for them. The last thing I'll put out there for anyone considering a fellowship, or just any musicians looking, young musicians, you know, trying to emerge into the orchestra field, is be bold, be brave, be aggressive towards pursuing your goals. Uncertainty, I don't think, is gonna, you won't get there if you have it. You have to know what you want to do, and you have to pursue that. Fellowships are there to help, but at the end of the day, it's you behind the screen, it's you in the practice room. We're a tool to help you achieve your goals. So have that spirit if this is truly what you want to do, and fellowships will be a really great tool to help you get there, I think.
Thanks, Ahmad. Thank you. So we are starting to get questions in through Slido, and if people who are in the room would like to ask a question in person, come on over to the microphone. I'm going to start with a very popular question, which I think is also hugely important in relationship to this whole discussion, which is this. What pipelines or pathways, if any, foster greater representation of people of color in arts administration, or for conductors, artistic directors specifically? Do you guys have suggestions you want to throw out? And then,
I mean, yeah, I'll jump right in. I mean, very much the pathway is the same. How many administrators do you know who went to conservatory or music school. I'm one of them. And pretty much, 70% of the people I work with are as well. So very much, it's everything
Yeah.
up until that point of deciding, are you a performer, are you administrator? It's the same pipeline.
I actually think the pathway for arts administrators might be even less established than the path, just in general, than the pathway to being an orchestral musician. I feel like when I talk to people in arts administration, we've all found our way in a variety of different ways. And I think that this is a really important issue within our institutions. We can't deign to make decisions on behalf of community. I think you've all spoken to that in different ways. We need to have community members be part of conversations that we're having about what programs are. So where are youth voices within the design of our programs? Where are the voices of community members within program design conversations? And where is there a diverse set of voices that is really representative of community? I know that's something we've been working on in the Wild Music Institute for the last couple of years, and we have shifted in certain ways who's on the staff, and that has been unbelievably helpful, and also has brought bumps and challenges and things for us to grapple with as an internal community. But just to say, I think that this is a huge, huge essential issue. We're going to go to Dan, and then we're going to go out to our questions here.
I'm just going to say, I think that as the conservatories have more entrepreneurial skills in their curriculum, that we're finding that it's easier to make that transition. I'd also say right from you got to go to the top. I mean, it's very easy in Baltimore because Maren Alsop is the conductor of the Baltimore Symphony, right? And I mean, she's the first female of a major symphony orchestra, and so that advocacy is coming from the top. I mean, she started the Taki Fellowship as a female conductor, and actually the head of conducting studies at the Peabody Conservatory now is Joseph Young, first African American head of conducting studies in Baltimore at Peabody, and he came out of a fellowship that Maren had at the symphony. So.
Yeah, so that leadership piece, her leadership is really extraordinary in this space. Thank you. We're going to go over here.
Hi, thanks. My name is Carlos Garcia Leon. I'm a first-year grad student at Cincinnati, CCM Payaman, in the arts administration program. And whoever asked that question about people of color in arts administration thank you for that. My performance is, my pedigree is in bassoon, but I think a lot of this has to go with people like lack of art administrators being people of color. Is that as a bassoonist, as a student of music, no one ever told me that arts administration was a career path for me, and like that's never been taught. That like it's a possibility because people are afraid that like you'll give up your music, that your passion. I follow arts administration because I feel that as a person of color, it gave me the most chance to give other people of color to do that. And I mean, I love seeing a young person of color performing, and like that smile is what gives me my drive. But I want to thank that and put that out there, like for me, and for other people. I'm the only person of color in my program. I don't know a lot of other people of color in arts administration programs, also because there's not a lot of other arts administration programs out there. But that a lot of it has to go within the school, that teachers and performers don't really incentivize that. That's not a question, it was just like my statement and my story.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Garrett. I'm a bassoonist and a classical radio host in Knoxville, Tennessee. One of my teachers, his name is Lacolian Washington, he once said that being present does not equal being welcome, and that being included does not mean you're being supported. So with that in mind, can any of you speak toward training initiatives for the members of the orchestras that house these different fellowship programs?
Great question.
Okay, well, since I'm the fellowship person up here, I'll speak to it. I think there is a lack of diversity, inclusion, equity training happening in orchestras. Honestly, I mean, I would fess up to that. It's something that would be great to see more of. I will say that a lot of the, addressing a lot of the issues that might come up when you have a fellow in your orchestra is, best to just address it straight up. And sometimes it's okay for us to say, if you don't have something positive to contribute to this, you might just have to keep it to yourself. I mean, that was a message that was conveyed with our orchestra. We have, 90 different musicians on stage, all with different experiences and different backgrounds and different feelings about the program, honestly. And it's a very complicated environment. I will say the outcome that we've seen has indicated that we have not allowed any personal feelings in the orchestra impact the experience of our fellows in a negative way that we know of or that they've been willing to tell us about. Also, constant communication and learning with fellows in your program. It's important to ask them, how's it going? Are things working the way that you'd hope they would? It's important to understand what their goals are when they come into the program and have this continuous state of honest conversation so that when there is an instance of someone feeling unwelcome or unsupported in our program, they have the power to tell someone about it. And we also ask the mentors to be aware of these types of things as well and to ask these questions and to take some responsibility for each fellow's assimilation to the orchestra, into the orchestra.
I think this really speaks to the need for training and for addressing internal culture if we are serious about doing this kind of work, whatever kind of institution we work for. I work for Carnegie Hall. That's a really important thing for us to be doing, and we've been doing that work within the Wild Music Institute for the last couple of years, and now the larger institution is at the very, very beginning of starting to do that internal assessment work and then training. And I think it's essential, and there are particular barriers and challenges within orchestras, I think, just because of the collective bargaining agreements to getting that kind of training in place. But I think that internal culture informs programming and communication and a million other things in so many different ways, and so that seems to me like it's an absolutely essential piece of this. Dan, I don't know if you wanted to make one more comment, and then we're going to go to Susan.
I was going to say, at a place like Orchids, I mean, it's more of a grassroots thing, but we don't have as many of those problems, I think, because the students are teaching in the program, and the students are becoming administrators in the program. I have a young woman who's a full-time employee now after going through the program, and I don't know, for us, I feel like it's more of a grassroots approach, and then the culture comes through that, and the training comes through that, and then the whole organization it mirrors that community, and
Yeah.
it doesn't feel so fake. It feels natural and a real process that
Organic
we're
in a
going
lot of
through.
ways, yeah. Thank you. Susan.
Sarah, I know you're the moderator, but given this subject, I wondered if you could share with the group some of the lessons you've learned in recruiting for the National Youth Orchestras.
Sure.
Good question.
Sure. So part of what we run in terms of programs at the Wild Music Institute is the National Youth Orchestra of the USA and NYO2, and newly this summer, NYO Jazz. And from the beginning of launching NYO USA, we have wanted that orchestra to be representative of the USA in every way. And we have known how hard that was going to be. And even in the first few years of the program, we saw that it became harder as the word got out to more and more young people about this opportunity. And so we launched NYO2, which is really focused on that opportunity piece and on providing opportunities, providing access to high quality instruction and to an inspirational peer group for young people who are underrepresented in the orchestral world. Very briefly, a couple of things that have been helpful to us. Number one, we did an enormous amount of network building at the very beginning. Beyond communicating with community music schools and youth orchestras, but calling the heads of state arts councils, asking for an amazing string play teacher in a rural place and what that person's email address is, and finding that person and having conversations and trying to communicate to people who would know the right kinds of young people who we were looking to target and invite into these programs. So that network piece is really huge. I think we found that the language you use and the images you use to communicate about programs, I mean, this is perhaps stating the obvious, but that's really, really important. Another thing I'll say that is kind of counterintuitive, but for NYO2, we put a nomination process in place. And it's interesting because we were trying to remove barriers to participation, so that might sound like it's another barrier. But what we found is that if you are a young person and you may or may not think that a national program is for you, maybe a program from Carnegie Hall, I don't know how I feel about that, and you see a poster, it might be pretty easy to dismiss it. But if somebody, an adult who knows you, who cares about you, nominates you and says, I think this would be great for you, that might send a slightly different message. And then if you hear from somebody at Carnegie Hall who says, hey, you've been nominated, what are you thinking? Are you planning to apply? Do you have any questions? Can we support you in any way? What are you thinking about the video? Do you know how to do that? Can we help you? That has made, we think anyway, I mean, we don't know this absolutely for certain, but we have heard from young people, and we believe that that nomination process has been really huge. So those are a couple of the things that on the recruitment side for the national ensembles, we think have been helpful. Do we have a question over here?
Hello, my name's Aaron. I'm a singer at Curtis, and go Curtis. I really appreciate all the programs and the summer programs and everything that I've heard about that have to do that prioritize diversity in the arts and everything. And I'm a person that wants to be involved in a lot of stuff like that, but I don't play an instrument. And my parents, they're not very musical, and they would also like to be a part of different projects and stuff like that. So my question is, do you know of something, like, do you have any suggestions for people who are like me and like my parents who would want to be involved in things like that, but can't necessarily go to those specific programs or to support those programs or stuff like that? Yeah.
Cool, so opportunities for young singers and for families who are interested in being involved.
This is a good pitch for El Sistema USA and the network of El Sistema programs in this country. Many of them have a vocal component to them. This is not just about orchestral education, right? This is about music education and diversifying the music industry. And we certainly need to be doing more with vocal music, but many of the El Sistema programs have a vocal component to it. I also think when you're talking about parental involvement or volunteering, that's a lot easier to do with community organizations. It might be more difficult to Carnegie, I don't know. But at a place like Orchids, we're dying for your sweat equity. So we come on down and we'll use you every day, and your parents and your grandparents and everyone else. And I find that volunteerism may be a little bit easier with the grassroots organizations.
And I would just say that even though Sphinx, originated as a string competition, it still is a string competition, but I would say if you're not already, sorry, I forgot I don't see where he went, if you're not already involved with Sphinx or haven't ever had a conversation with Afa Dworkin or anybody on the Sphinx staff, I highly encourage you to do that, because it is certainly not only string players or even instrumentalists that are working behind the scenes of Sphinx to make really amazing things happen. In fact, I believe that there's a connection between the Sphinx Performance Academy and Curtis. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but part of SPA, I believe, and someone can, yes, nodding, is actually taking place at Curtis this summer. Yeah. So maybe you need to talk.
And I think that speaks also a little bit to the question here about will fellowship opportunities include woodwinds? So maybe that's evolving and hopefully can evolve more. There's one more question here I want to throw out, which is the following. I love Dan's comment that we in classical music can validate other forms. Can you give examples? How can we show value but dispel the notion that it's better? And I'm going to connect that to a couple of other questions. One of them being, why is classical music emphasized as the gold standard of music in our programs in underserved communities? Yeah, Dan, do you want to talk about how classical music can validate other art forms and
how classical music can validate other?
Well, that's the way the question is phrased. You can rephrase if you would like.
Well, those of you from Detroit, you know about the Detroit Institute of Music Education, DIME, that was founded. That was founded by folks that were in the Motown industry that went to audition at the universities around here and were told that your voice is amazing, but you can't sing that music here, right? This is the same thing that happened with the gospel musicians. Yeah. They came and sang gospel and said, no, we don't do that, we do opera here. I think that's really a harsh reality for anyone to be in. I don't know. Mashups, composition and playing other genres, I think they go hand in hand with playing classical music better and better. The more notes you can play, the more that I want to work with you as a hip-hop artist, as a composer, and all those things. And I think we have a lot to offer the other genres of music, and maybe that's the question. And a big one is the classical aesthetic, that we sit in practice rooms and rehearse, and we'll get it done, and make the music really high quality.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's most exciting and interesting to me is what can we learn from other genres of music, and what can we collectively create? What can we learn from each other? I think there is so much richness in that question, and in the education space, in the pathway space, we have a little more flexibility around that I think can be really exciting to all of us. So we are getting a very strong signal that our time has expired. I want to thank everyone on the panel for being part of this discussion. And I want to thank all of you for being a part of the conversation as well. And we'll be around for a few minutes, I assume, if people have more questions they want to ask. But thank you all.